Let me ask you something you probably haven't thought about in a while. Why can't you just hop on a plane and visit Antarctica? I mean it. If you had the money, the gear, the team, you could climb Mount Everest. You could swim with sharks off the coast of South Africa. You could even book a ticket to space these days. But Antarctica, that's different. That's the only place on Earth where freedom of movement doesn't apply. There's an invisible wall wrapped in ice, and no one's telling you why. They'll say it's for your safety. They'll point to the Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959, as a beautiful act of international cooperation. No war, no drilling, no conflict, they'll smile. But come on, when in history have 50 nations suddenly agreed on anything, let alone to share the most resource-rich, mysterious continent on Earth? Something doesn't add up. Because here's the thing, Antarctica is huge. It's bigger than Europe. And yet, if you look at any flight path, you'll notice an eerie pattern. Planes avoid it. Not just commercial ones, but military aircraft too. There's a no-fly zone over certain regions that doesn't make sense. Not geographically, not politically, and definitely not scientifically. And I'm not just speculating. In 2018, a private charter pilot, one of the few cleared to approach within 100 miles of a restricted Antarctic sector, said something chilling in an off-record interview. He claimed his aircraft navigation systems began glitching. His compass spun. And then a message came over the comms. You are entering a restricted atmospheric zone. Turn back immediately. A restricted atmospheric zone? That's not something you say about ice. Unless what's under the ice isn't just ice. I know this sounds like the beginning of a bad sci-fi movie. But stay with me. Because 1958, the year before the treaty, something big happened. Something that got the attention of global powers in a way that forced silence. That year, a series of underground echo signatures were picked up by American and Soviet seismic stations. Some say it was an underground detonation. Others say it was movement. As if something woke up. It was the same year Operation Deep Freeze ramped up, a U.S. mission to supposedly explore the Antarctic region. But what they brought wasn't exploration gear. It was nuclear-powered drills, deep radar systems, and a small army of specialists that had zero background in geology or meteorology. So what were they really drilling for? Here's where it gets darker. Declassified CIA documents from the late 60s refer to Structure 591. It's vague, redacted, and buried under a mess of technical jargon. But one phrase keeps repeating, non-anthropogenic symmetry. In plain English, that means it wasn't made by humans. At least, not by us. Now, ask yourself, if an object, a structure, or worse, a civilization was found buried beneath Antarctica, what would the global reaction be? Chaos, collapse, every history book rewritten, every religion questioned, every government exposed for hiding it. That's why the silence is so loud. Because if there's one thing power hates, it's uncertainty. And nothing brings more uncertainty than the idea that someone or something was here before us, smarter than us, maybe still active. And that's why we're kept out. You see, Antarctica isn't just cold, it's controlled. Controlled in a way that no other piece of land on this planet has ever been. Controlled so tightly, so absolutely, that even questions are discouraged. Scientists who speak out get their funding cut. Pilots get blacklisted. Whistleblowers disappear into a fog of national security. You're not meant to look too closely, but I am. And so are you. Because if there's a cathedral under that ice, one built before recorded history, guarded by treaties, protected by global silence, we deserve to ask, who built it? Who's guarding it? And why is the world pretending it's not there? In the next section, we'll talk about the leaked files, the ones they buried, deleted, scrubbed from search engines, but not before a few pages slipped out. And trust me, it gets stranger. Let's talk about the files, the ones that were never meant to surface. They call it Operation Ice Cathedral. No press release, no official statement, no government record you can Google. But for those who spend enough time in old archives, forgotten FTP servers, and the strange corners of military subcontractor forums, fragments start to appear. In late 2003, a batch of documents labeled ARX-PATMOS was uploaded briefly on a now-defunct Navy database. Within 24 hours, the site was taken offline, but not before a few digital archaeologists saved them. What they showed wasn't just coordinates, but schematics. Cross-sections of what looked like a subterranean structure, layered in near-perfect geometry. Vaulted domes, radial chambers, columned hallways, buried over 2 miles beneath the surface near the Queen Maud Land sector of East Antarctica. One of the diagrams even had a nickname scribbled in the margin, the Cathedral. Now, you might say, sure, someone faked it. It's the internet. People love hoaxes. But here's where it gets harder to dismiss. A few years later, in 2007, a former Lockheed Martin systems engineer named Dr. Jules Kerrigan gave an anonymous interview through a voice-obscuring podcast that got buried fast. He claimed he was brought onto a black-level mission dealing with thermal anomalies under the Antarctic ice shelf. When asked what they found, he didn't mince words. "We weren't studying ice. We were scanning architecture, and not ours. Vaulted ceilings, inscriptions. It was something pre-human. Maybe prehistory itself." He refused to elaborate on what the inscription said, only that they were mathematically encoded and unlike any known written language. That interview, scrubbed. Podcast deleted. Domain expired. But the transcript lives on, and it lines up with the schematics. So the question becomes, why a cathedral? Why use that word? Cathedrals aren't just buildings, they're symbols. Places built not just for worship, but for reverence, for resonance, for power. Acoustic chambers meant to amplify sound, energy, intention. Could that be the point? Some researchers, ones who risk academic suicide for even entertaining this, suggest that the structure under Antarctica may not be a cathedral in the religious sense, but a machine, a frequency chamber, something designed to do more than just sit in silence, something built to interact. One Russian scientist, under alias Arkady7, posted a chilling account in 2011 about a geothermal borehole drilled near Dome C. After passing 1.7 miles, their instruments picked up what he called resonant harmonics, tones that repeated in patterns, as if the ice wasn't just melting. It was singing back. That's not normal. You don't get harmonic feedback from compacted snow, unless there's a chamber beneath it, unless that chamber was built for sound, unless that sound was meant to communicate. Let's go deeper. Satellite scans from 2012 to 2014 showed a recurring thermal signature, pulsing in cycles, then disappearing. The data, first flagged by a European Space Agency analyst, was quickly classified. Their official explanation? Volcanic activity. But volcanoes don't pulse in perfect 5-hour intervals. Volcanoes don't sync with electromagnetic surges picked up on civilian radio equipment 10,000 miles away. Something else is happening down there. And the elites? They're not just aware of it. They're interested. Because around the same time as these signals peaked, a curious pattern emerged. High-profile figures, John Kerry, Patriarch Kirill of Russia, several unnamed EU officials, all made sudden, quiet trips to Antarctica. No press coverage, no agenda, no public photographs. Just an empty flight manifest and a few grainy satellite captures showing military-grade transport planes landing at obscure outposts with no official research ties. What are they looking at? What are they being shown? And why has no journalist been allowed to follow? Think about that. Antarctica is the last blank space on the map, a continent-sized question mark. And inside it, under the ice, there's something that looks like a temple, acts like a machine, and hums like a voice trying to get through. If that doesn't warrant attention, I don't know what does. In the next section, we'll look at who's visiting this place. Not scientists, not explorers, but the powerful. The ones who own satellites, stock markets, and narratives. And when those people start acting like pilgrims, you should start asking what god they're going to meet. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Why do the most powerful people on the planet keep showing up in the most desolate place on Earth? Not for the photo ops, not for the press, not for science. They go quietly, privately, and they never explain why. Let's rewind to 2016. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry made a surprise trip to Antarctica on Election Day. Let that sink in. The most politically charged moment in American history in decades, and the man fourth in line to the presidency flew to the bottom of the world. No press allowed, no clear agenda, just climate research, they claimed. Climate research? In the middle of the election? Give me a break. But Kerry wasn't alone. Around that time, Patriarch Kirill, head of the Russian Orthodox Church, also visited Antarctica. His official reason? To bless a remote chapel. But who exactly was he blessing it for? Penguins? Frozen research staff? Or maybe for someone or something beneath the ice? Now, I know what you're thinking. It's weird, but not proof. Coincidence? Maybe. So let's add one more piece to the puzzle. In 2018, Buzz Aldrin, yes, that Buzz Aldrin, second man to walk on the moon, made his own journey to Antarctica. But something went wrong. He was airlifted out after suffering what officials called altitude sickness. When he returned to social media, he posted a bizarre tweet, later deleted, that simply said, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself," accompanied by a photo of the South Pole. Now, tell me again, this is just climate research. What if these aren't random visits? What if they're part of a pattern, a pilgrimage? Because here's what I believe. These aren't politicians and astronauts visiting a patch of ice. These are power players being shown something, briefed, initiated, given access to knowledge the rest of us aren't meant to hold. Maybe they're being warned. Maybe they're being recruited. But one thing is clear. It's not science, it's ritual. And you know who else shows up, quietly, under the radar? Tech billionaires. In the past 5 years, at least 3 Silicon Valley elites, names you'd know immediately, have bought land or invested in infrastructure for Antarctic expeditions. None of them have backgrounds in geology or glaciology, but they have something else, a fascination with preservation, with data vaults, bunkers, off-grid fortresses. One source, formerly employed at a climate modeling firm in Norway, claimed his company was approached in 2020 to model glacial melt for subterranean access planning. But not in the name of saving the planet, in the name of reaching something. Something frozen, something ancient. They offered a bonus for confidentiality. He didn't take it. So what are they looking for? Or should I say, what are they preparing for? There's a theory among fringe researchers, one I used to roll my eyes at, that what's buried beneath the Antarctic ice isn't just a relic. It's an interface, a kind of key, not to a door, but to a frequency, a way of seeing, or worse, a way of controlling. And the elites, they want front row seats. Because if there's knowledge buried under Antarctica, knowledge that predates religion, predates history, even predates humanity, then the first to access it won't just be rich. They'll be gods. At least, that's what they think. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. What if that cathedral isn't dead? What if it's not a ruin but a receiver? What if it's been waiting for the right signal, the right mind, the right moment? And what if the people visiting it, are trying to be that moment. Look, I'm not saying everyone who flies to Antarctica is part of some grand conspiracy, but when world leaders, spiritual icons, and trillion-dollar technocrats all start moving in the same direction, off camera, it means something. They know something, and they're not telling us. In the next section, I'm going to talk about you, me, all of us. What we're not being told, and why this drip feed of alien fossils, ancient civilizations, and climate panic might all be part of the same game. Not to inform us, but to distract us. So where does that leave us? Sitting behind screens, scrolling, distracted. While under thousands of feet of ancient ice, something waits. And the people with the keys keep smiling for cameras, cutting ribbons, and telling us not to worry. But let me ask you something. Have you noticed the slow, careful trickle of stories lately? Not breaking news, not front-page headlines, just quiet little stories, easily missed, casually ignored. Ancient civilization found beneath Greenland ice. Microbes awaken after 30,000 years frozen. UFO footage officially confirmed by Pentagon. Earth's magnetic field acting strangely again. They don't connect these dots for us. They never do. But that doesn't mean the dots aren't connected. We are being softened, conditioned, acclimated to the idea that our history isn't what we think it is. That maybe we're not the first advanced species. That maybe we've lost entire chapters of time beneath floods, ice, and willful erasure. And when the time comes to unveil what they've found under the ice, they'll say, "We've always been transparent." But we'll know better. Because by then, the story won't belong to us. It'll be packaged, branded, controlled. A 6-part docuseries, a government press conference, a staged discovery. And every word you hear will be filtered through layers of plausible deniability, security briefings, and non-disclosure agreements signed in rooms we'll never see. I mean, think about it. What would happen if the truth actually came out? That a non-human structure predating the last ice age lies under Antarctica. That our myths of gods descending from the sky, of knowledge given to man, of flood-cleansed rebirths, weren't just metaphors, but memories. Would religions collapse? Would economies panic? Would governments lose control? Or would people simply not believe it? Because that's the final layer of insulation they've built, disbelief. Make the truth sound just crazy enough that no one dares take it seriously. Oh, you believe in the ice cathedral thing? What's next? Flat Earth. And so the ridicule becomes a shield, a defense mechanism, a self-policing narrative that protects the secret better than any security force ever could. But here's where it gets really strange. The stories don't stop. They keep leaking. From ex-military whistleblowers, from anonymous sources, from scientists who retire and suddenly grow a conscience, from blurry footage captured on GoPros and forgotten satellites. And you start to realize the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be preserved. Because when it's finally safe to believe, the truth will be ready. And maybe, just maybe, the cathedral under the ice isn't just a place, it's a test. Of who's watching, who's paying attention, who still asks questions when they're told to stop. You, me. People who don't settle for surface answers. Because here's what I think. The cathedral isn't ancient. It's awake. And the ones who control it, they're not worried about the past. They're thinking about what comes next. A new narrative, a new order, a new God perhaps, not in robes or halos but in frequencies. Something cold, geometric, resonant, not worshipped in songs but in silence. Something built, not for us, but for the ones who came before. And maybe the reason it stayed hidden for so long is because humanity wasn't ready. Not until now. So the next time you hear some billionaire is just visiting Antarctica for climate research, ask yourself, what cathedral needs that kind of congregation? And why are the doors finally opening? Because under that ice, the future is humming, and someone's already started listening.